You hit the nail on the head on why golf is so great for networking.
You always have to be the 51 that's giving more than you're taking.
Yeah.
But you got to learn how to get off the tee box.
Yep.
If you can't get off a tee box, it's going to be an embarrassing round.
Welcome, everybody, into the Fairways to Fortune podcast. I'm your host, Joe Canfield, founder and CEO of FairwaysRM. I'm sitting down here with Shea Swensen, who is the CEO and founder of Stonebriar. Excited to be here with you, Shea, today.
Excited to be here.
We haven't ever had a conversation in depth like this before. We were just chatting before we went live here, and we got a lot of common, including the theme of golf, which everybody's got in common these days, which is what it feels like. But excited to be here with you and to learn a little bit more about you and the involvement in the game and how you've used it to build your career.
Sure. I'm excited to be here, man.
Awesome. Well, let's start with your background a little bit. You've spent, the last decade in financial services, which is one of those traditional golfer background, niches that everybody's out there playing golf, trying to sign clients. One of the stories that I tell in my training is there's a financial services advisor and he's trying to sign a big client and, lunches and phone calls and emails, and none of it worked. And it wasn't until they got on the golf course and the client saw him play and he says, "Hey, if you can take care of my money like you take care of your golf game, I'm in." So I'm excited to listen to how you've been able to do that. So give me a little background on your career and where you're at today.
So I grew up in Blanding, Utah, so southeastern Utah. I spent the first 8 years in Florida, and then some family issues happened, so I got moved into my grandparents when I was about 8. And then, so Blanding's a little town, 3,000 people. Yep. But thankfully, there's a uranium mill that's down there, and it was one of the only active ones in the country. And so that was one of the places people had jobs. So when we moved from Florida, me and my dad moved to Blanding, lived with my grandparents. He worked at the mill. But the mill obviously would open up and then it would shut down. It would open up and shut down. Well, over the years, before all the regulations came in, they used to truck the uranium out. Okay. Well, they didn't actually follow the rules. Yeah. And so years later, there was cancers that came up in our town. A lot more on the older folks would, when they passed away, they did an autopsy and found because of this uranium, it caused this cancer, which... Sure. I assume some of them were, the reason they died, but most of them were just an effect of the reason they died. Well, because of that, there was a big lawsuit, and a part of that lawsuit money they had between Blanding and Monticello is enough money to kind of upgrade the 9-hole course to an 18-hole course to the Hideout Country Club, which is ranked nationally. Everyone's got publications, but it's ranked top 5 in the state almost every year. Yeah. No one ever plays it, though, because it's in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So I got to grow up in a place where my grandpa golfed every single day. And we actually helped build the 9 holes once they expanded. I remember as a kid, like my grandpa in his truck, we'd literally haul the stone from Blanding. Somebody had, a lot of the town had donated stuff as well, along with the money to kind of build this course. And so I remember us hauling, in the 18th hole, there's a big lake. And so we created kind of, not a lake, but kind of like a pond in front of the green. And so I remember us going down there and getting the rock to build it. That's cool. And I was probably 10, 9 or 10. So it was cool as I grew up and I picked up golf my sophomore year that, and I was on that course every day. Yeah. Every day I could. I ended up quitting football, which my grandpa was like the first football coach in Blanding history and legends. And then they have this extra kid that he's raising and you think, oh, he's going to play football. And then after freshman year, I quit. And I've said it before, but I was so nervous to tell him because he was just that guy. And first person in the Blanding Hall of Fame, and he's in the state of Utah Hall of Fame. But I told him I wanted to golf instead of play football. And within, I think, 2 days, he had called the coach, and he became the assistant coach. And so got to golf with my grandpa a ton. And he was your typical kind of 8 handicap. He shot 80 every single, 79, 80, no matter what. It was never an 85. It was never a 75. It was 80, 79, 80 every time. And so he was a good one in the beginning for me to just follow in the game of golf. It took me about a year to beat him, but I could start to beat him, maybe 2 years, but I could beat my dad pretty quickly. And then I started to beat him. And so I played on the high school team. We weren't very good, but it was fun. It was competitive, and I got to play golf in kind of a fun way, with the buddies. Yeah. But when you get in those, what they say is the ropes, not really ropes in high school, no one's watching. But that when you feel it, there's a different feeling when you're playing competitively than when you're just messing around on the course with your friends. And so I love that. I loved playing that, and I'm grateful that I built that game because even though I went on an LDS mission, I came home, I didn't really have as much time to golf anymore. You got to survive. I could always just pick up the game and go beat anybody I played for the most part.
Yeah.
And so I think to answer your question of like background in the business is I don't think I really used it until probably the last couple years.
Sure.
But I was always confident to go play, and I know there's a lot of people that are not confident to go play, and so they'll say no to events that maybe end up in good business relationships, but because they're not very good at it, they'll say no, or they'll find an excuse not to go.
Right.
So I think that was kind of my history of the game of golf. I got to learn from a grandpa who loved it, and I got to appreciate it. I have a lot of respect for the game of golf, but I think the last 2 years it's helped me a lot more in business and some of the things that I've done going on.
And what are those things in business that it's helped you do? I mean, I know that you're heavily involved down at Black Desert. You're involved in all kinds of boards. I'm honestly surprised we had the time to sit down with just all the stuff that you've got going on. So tell me a little bit more about how
what
golf
I do,
it has gotten you into where you're at.
So I about 8 years ago, I left the solar industry 7-8 years ago and got recruited into wealth management, and that was in Florida. Well, I left from Utah and moved to Orlando, and so I think most people thought, oh man, you moved to Florida, you're just gonna golf all the time, and I think I did. There was moments where I golfed a lot, but honestly, I joke with people, Florida's not a great place to golf. Like it's hot and sticky unless you're on the you're on the next to the coasts, right? Sure. Then there can be great. Beautiful. It's beautiful. Jupiter, right? That's why they're all down there.
Yeah.
But I was surprised for years that Orlando was like the spot because it is just muggy and sticky. So the only times that you appreciate Orlando golf is during the winter, right? Because you can play, and then it's not that bad. It's actually more normal. Yeah. But I remember living there a couple years and then coming back to Utah and playing with some buddies, and I'm like, oh, it's way nicer here. Like I'd literally go to Utah to play golf. Yeah. Like I didn't golf in Florida as much. So, but I got into wealth management and I loved it, and I spent a lot of time just kind of zoning in on that. And I didn't have a lot of friends. That was the first time in my career for it was about 5 years there, 5-6 years. I just put my head down and I just worked, and I built a skill. And helped two brothers that owned a company called Oxford grow it. And, we grew it they left their dad and grew from about 20 million to $500 million. And now I'm sure they're close to $1 billion now since I've left. And they were great mentors in it. They both suck at golf, but they were good mentors in the industry. And so about 3 years ago, I moved back, had a good partner, Gary, and we came together and just started up Stonebriar Financial. Which is now has an arm of Stonebriar Wealth Advisors, and so we got a lot going on in the financial services. But now being back, I had this huge network, and I started golf again, and that's when I started to fall in kind of love with golf again. And in that, the way we got into it in Utah is we started to just sponsor all of the charity tournaments.
Yeah.
So every charity tournament, I literally bought a foursome in, or we bought a tee, and then halftime I'd forget, so I'm scrambling to get 4 people together to go play for us.
Yeah.
And it was on a Monday, and I have to go to work. I can't go play golf, so I was just my dad was taking people, and we that was kind of what we did. And one of the goals that I had is we'd buy all the auctions, and we'd try to just support in those ways. We ended up doing the first Folds of Honor tournament. So Folds of Honor, if anybody knows about it, huge operation, charity that gives scholarships to children and families who lost their spouse or parent in awesome military, right? Yeah. So either they passed away or they're injured, and then they just extended it to emergency services, EMTs, firefighters, police officers, those families as well. So last year, I think they did either $43 or $47 million in scholarships just per year that's going out. So my partner Gary's brother, is a colonel, but he ended up flying with Dan Rooney, who's the founder of Folds of Honor. So that's how we had that connection, and I'd known about him. And so I remember sitting at their tournament in Florida, and I asked him, I said, hey, is anybody doing one in Utah? This is before I moved. And he said, no one's doing them in Utah. And so when we came back, we ended up doing one of the first things that kicked off our company, about a year after our company, that next summer, is we did a Folds of Honor tournament, and it was awesome. It packed out. That's awesome. Budweiser's a big sponsor of them. They came out, everybody came out to this tournament, and we just put it together, felt like last minute. And so that kind of set the tone of us just getting involved in the game of golf. I remember talking with some of the UGA and PGA members here in Utah, And I remember joking with I think it was Devin. I said, "Hey, how do we get a tournament here in Utah? Like, we need to get a PGA tournament." I remember him telling me, being like, "Well, there's a couple people working on it," and it was right before Black Desert announced. Black Desert hadn't quite announced it. It was probably still a few months before Black Desert actually got it done. But it was cool to see what Utah's not just done on a business level, but because of that, obviously golf becomes an attractive place.
Right.
And so that's kind of how we got integrated in. But what's going to lead to, I think, some of your questions is in that we ended up doing a partnership with BYU on just like a sponsorship partnership.
Yeah.
And a part of that was to give some events for our clients, and we did some fun things with them. But that was right at the time that BYU was launching the Royal Blue Collective.
Okay.
And so I got to meet with Russ White and Mark Comer and some of these guys that are kind of were helping BYU put this together.
Right.
So I did a lot of studying on NIL, the name, image, and likeness, which you just talked about. There's some things coming out in the next little bit that's changing everything. But I kind of got integrated, and it's led me back to kind of help some of the golfers that are coming up, the junior golfers coming up, because I understood NIL kind of from football and basketball, kind of the main sports.
Sure.
But because I kind of knew the direction, people started to reach out and say, "Hey, can you help my son? Can you help this person? Can you help this?" And because of that experience, kind of learning in the ground right when they started, I was able to give some direction, which kind of brought it back to me supporting golfers and some of the things that we're doing now.
Yeah, you're heavily involved with junior golf, which is fantastic. I love junior golf. I actually coach a junior clinic all summer long, which is so fun. My son's 7 years old, and I've got him in the game. And you mentioned you could beat your dad pretty handily, and I think that's going to be the best and the worst day of my life when my son beats me. It's going to be hurt the pride a little bit, but also be super excited for him.
My dad can only beat me on one course, and that's Cedar Hills.
There you go.
I don't know why I can't play Cedar Hills to save my life. So he'll be like, "Hey, let's go play Cedar Hills today." And I'm like, "All right." So he'll beat me there. But no, that's awesome.
You mentioned the world of NIL and golf, and that's how you're involved with juniors. And we may go a little bit off the rails here a little bit and get into a completely different topic, but I'm totally okay with that. NIL is a background that I have from working at a university for 8 years. And like you mentioned, things are going crazy in that world right now. But I also have my coach's son. He's 16 years old, and he's living in that world right now. He's out in South Carolina. Has a small sponsorship deal from Mizuno, and he's going to colleges every weekend and getting recruited, which is incredible. But tell me a little bit how you're helping with that process and what that looks like from your standpoint.
Through one of the politicians here, I got introduced to Alan Aquina and his son Kihei. Not only a great Utah golfer, but he's nationally recognized. And USA Today, it was right actually before I met Alan. He was recognized as the top high school golfer in the country.
He's being recruited by UNLV and all these big programs,
all the schools, right? Yeah. And so I got to meet Alan, his dad, and Alan is interesting enough. He owns 101 Financial, which is a financial literacy kind of platform, and that's right in my world. So we got connected because of a couple things. But I remember talking to him. We spent some time talking about Kihei and that he was getting heavily recruited. And now that I always felt like basketball and football, it wasn't as hard of a transition because some of the schools were doing it before it was legal to do it anyway. So the boosters were already doing it. But you get into some of these other sports, and this is like really, really new for them. Right. And I think golf is one of those where they've always had donor support across schools. Yeah. But now in the recruiting process, it was just a whole different game. And so I really think this 2025 class in golf, even though it's been around for a couple of years, NIL, it's really the first time it's got to the game of golf.
Yeah, they started learning about it at 14, 15 years old, and that's about the time that you start to specialize and things like that. And so
when it changed some of these kids' decisions, because in golf's an individual sport, although on the collegiate level they play a team sport. On the high school they play in a team sport, but really, unlike football, basketball, other sports, this is an individual game. We just happen to play a team format when you're in college. And so some of these kids have changed their idea. Actually, they're going to college now. Yeah. Where they wouldn't have. Yeah. Because they would have taken the Q school route. They would have taken maybe going on an Asian tour or going on a different tour, because that may have been a better place for them than going to college. And now with NIL, I think it's keeping more kids in. I know there's one of the top recruits out of New Zealand wasn't going to go, and now he's thrown his hat in the ring in the 2025. Right. Because that's where the kids and the PGA's got partnerships now with the colleges. And it's just, it seems like a better marketable route than some of these others.
There's the PGAU program. There's all those things. And rather than trying to go spend a bunch of money grinding it out through Q school, which is a horrible way to get into pro golf. Like, is
the last
unbelievable.
resort.
Right. I joke with someone that the next full swing needs to be on
Yes.
guys trying to get into the pro tour on Q School because
Absolutely.
it is insane what those guys go through. But you hit on it, and it's guaranteed money almost, and they're going to be able to play beautiful golf courses and have great coaching while they're there. The coaching staff down at BYU is incredible.
Right.
Such a storied program. You got guys like Mike Reed that have come out of there. So many good names that have come out of the BYU program. And so these guys are coming in, they're getting coaches. They're not having to pay for the coaching. They're doing those kinds of things. So I think that's incredible work that you're doing. And
well, and that's kind of where, Kihei, I kind of came in halfway through his recruiting process, and Alan's amazing father, and they there was every school had thrown their hat in the ring, and all the, he had probably the biggest offers of anybody up until this point, and it will only get higher every year as new recruits come in, but this is a tough decision for a kid that's looked at. Every school wants him,
right.
So now it's not like you get to choose between two. You get to choose from anywhere you want to go.
Anywhere you want to go, right.
And there's everyone's opinions. I know he's got buddies going to Arizona State, or he's got, Oklahoma State with these, $40 million facilities.
Yeah, right.
And so you're getting pulled in all these directions. But now with NIL, it's part of it is NIL, but it's not just university. It's, okay, what is the local communities around the university going to help? And in golf, because like you said, last case scenario is Q School, is you want to get opportunities to go play in exemptions. You want to go get opportunities. So it's not just, hey, the amount of money. Like Kihei's example, like BYU is not the highest amount of money by any means. But BYU really put together an opportunity for him to grow in what we believe was the best chance for him to go pro.
Right.
And that was the goal. It wasn't the money. And I mean, Alan talked a lot of times of just about resources. Like it's about resources. And that's getting the community involved. That's getting people involved to say, hey, we have not just him, but we've got a class of great young golfers that have come through Utah and are only coming up over and over and over again. How do we make the state of Utah a place where the junior amateurs want to be?
Yeah.
And that we create an area where they do want to go to BYU or Utah Tech now with Black Desert down there.
Yep.
That we become a place that's attractive because we are known to play good golf, even in a place that snows, 4 or 6 months a year.
Right.
And I think in Kihei, I got to see it. They were already ahead of the game, but I got to see how tough it was for these kids to try to figure out what the best path was.
Yeah.
And so no one really knew where he was going until he announced it. Like, I think people think we're crazy, but like this was his decision the entire time.
Yeah.
There was multiple people helping and involved in it. And I think BYU just felt like the best place. Obviously, his brother was already there and had walked on, and Keanu was amazing. And so I still think BYU was very lucky to get him, because I don't think a month before BYU was going to get him. I don't think they were getting him. There was a big change those last 30 days. But I've been able to see now with Kihei, now, once he decided on BYU, now working with sponsors now. And he'll have an announcement coming up of a sponsorship that we just got done, and some of these things coming up. And all of it is really cool, because a lot of these kids back in the day had to sell their contract, like their future earnings, to make it.
Yep.
That's what I get. There's arguments in every sports, but in golf, tennis, some of these individual sports, some of these kids, they don't come from money.
Yeah, no.
They got in some of these crazy deals, some of these backwards deals where they're giving away 40% of their career earnings at 16.
Right.
And that being said, if they wouldn't have done that, they may have not made it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know.
Balance, right?
But that was the option they had.
Yeah.
That was the only option. And now with NIL, they can actually stay in school, and they can actually go to school, and they can do these things. And so it's been fun with Kihei seeing the opportunities, but also helping these brands understand how to utilize NIL. And I think we're still just trying to make
scratching the surface.
Yeah, I think the state of Utah, it's so funny, and don't mind me bashing some of the universities, and we'll just put them all together because it's not just one of them. I think there's a lot of the big companies that have got so used to just sponsorships, right? Their names on buildings and these things, and that prices went up. I know people that are companies are spending $1 million to get their name and some of these benefits. And they are not utilizing NIL.
No.
Which, in my opinion, I think they should use $200,000, get the logo rights, and then you have $800,000 to go do NIL deals with, and go create meaningful campaigns, charity campaigns. Go bring the people, get these players involved, give them experiences on giving back.
Yeah.
where and that's this pull between the university and the kind of
it's
collectives.
such a weird balance where you can't
tough.
just take all that funding out of the athletic department.
And you can't take it out of the athletic department because they
what-
got a bunch of employees. They got to pay for
employees.
everything.
What happens to Olympic sports?
There you go.
There was finally one AD finally said, "Hey guys, you know that football and basketball pays for everything else, right?"
Yes.
Which is, I think, something that's been kind of missed in a lot of this conversation. Where
Absolutely.
my wife was a soccer player at the University of Utah, and like that's not a program that's making money, but
Absolutely.
it's important for kids. Like she wouldn't have gone to college without it.
Right.
Like she was on scholarship. Like it wasn't something that she was going to do if she didn't play soccer. And so it's a weird line to balance. And I mean, honestly, it's kind of scary moment for college athletics and to see where it is. I was sitting down with one of the associate athletic directors at the university talking about this kind of stuff. And he's like, I don't know. I wake up every morning and I read the D1 ticker and I'm like, okay, what am I dealing with today? Right. And so it is a crazy world, but I kind of want to get back to golf and how those things connect people, because that's actually where I got my start playing golf for business, was at a university setting with these big donors, with these big partners. And when I first stepped foot on the course, I was playing with a VP of a Fortune 500 company, and I'm 22 years old. I'm fresh out of business school. I don't know what I'm doing talking to these kinds of people. But I want to hear some stories about maybe what you've done with people like that are kind of above your league or out of your league a little bit, but golf has been able to be that connector for you.
Yeah, I think this is something that I think it's networking in general, right? So we hear a lot of people say like, hey, we need to be better networkers. So I've been told that like, there's a couple of people who be like, they think I'm omnipresent because I seem to be at every event. And I seem to be in all these places because I'm a connector. I learned quickly for the first time in my life reading Malcolm Gladwell, Tipping Point, where it talked about the 3 people that are part of major movements that he studied, and there's mavens, connectors, salespeople.
Right.
And I think, all of us can have skills in any of those, but I was naturally always a connector. My brain always thought with an easier way to get to the same solution, and if I can use a connection to get there, it's always a better experience. Right. The same thing with if you're applying for a job, if you're just doing it on Indeed,
right,
you're just on a stack of 80 people that applied for this job, or I do some research, figure out if I have any connections of somebody that works there, and give them my resume, which they're going to go put right on the CEO's desk.
Right.
Like, doesn't mean I'll get chosen, but I just got on the top.
Yeah,
I just got on the top, and that is using connection to be able to put yourself in a better position. The line, though, I get asked a lot of people is like, how do I network better? And people are networking. Networking is, in my opinion, is relationships.
Yeah. The
relationship will lead to the sale.
Right.
The moment on the golf course, at the event, at the thing, is not to sell.
Yep.
The moment there is to build relationships.
Yep.
Those relationships built up, you reap what you sow. You sow those relationships, you build those relationships, and then you will get the fruits of them down the line.
Right.
But the problem is most people can't take the time to build the relationship. They want the result right away.
Right, exactly.
So why they're like, I try to network, it doesn't work. I'm like, because you're just trying to sell people.
Right.
Like you're not building a relationship.
Yep.
This isn't a transaction
You're
way.
walking in that room looking at people as dollar signs. You're not looking at them as potential help or this is something that
100%.
I see in you a lot is we were texting earlier today about this interview, right? And you said, how can I help you?
Sure.
I said, hey, what do you want to plug? What do you want to push? Is there anything? And you said, no, how can I help you?
Yep.
And that is, I was like, this is awesome. And I see you do this in other things too, where it's the other person first. And I want to understand, where'd that come from in you?
51. So it started from, when I left solar, I was kind of getting out of it. And I ended up leaving my job. I had an offer to go work for those guys in Florida, but it was like 5 months. So they offered me the job, and then they're like, well, we're not ready for you. But I had already quit my job. So they ended up covering me for a period of time, and I ended up picking up like a side job. I helped build another sales team for another company, but it was just like a contract almost. Sure. But those months, I got to spend a lot more time just relaxing. It wasn't as stressful as when I was before. And I think this was right when I found Gary Vaynerchuk.
Sure.
So I was always a Simon Sinek guy, which is start with why. Like I loved Liz Wiseman was a mentor of mine. Greg McEwen, I got trained by both of them early on my mission, and I knew them personally. and then Simon Sinek. Like those are the three people I looked at. And then I met this crazy New Yorker from wherever he's from that cusses all the time.
Yeah.
And this is like 2016. And before, I don't even think he had 1 million people on Instagram yet that followed
Sure.
Gary Vee, and he hadn't hit that moment yet of where he's at now. And I remember he was just a marketing guy.
Yeah.
But it was all based on relationships. And I think I watched every single YouTube video that he ever put out. And one of the things that just kind of ingrained in me is he called it 51-49.
Yeah.
That if you want to have good relationships, you always have to be the 51 that's giving more than
Right.
you're taking.
Yeah.
And you should always try. It's not about taking more than it's literally, you should always be one ahead. You should always be on the head that you're giving more. And not that you're expecting almost anything back either,
Right.
but that if you do that, it will come back to you in some way. And so I think to answer that is I've always believed that. It was good in a business world like Gary that I respected in kind of this entrepreneur world to hear that, like, okay, not just in life is that important,
Right.
but in like the game of business, that is still important. And so give, take, right? Like if you can give enough, then those relationships will be ready when you need them.
Right.
And rarely in my life, like honestly, there's been moments, and those moments where like I am desperate for this. I know I have a list of people that would do it in a heartbeat because of what I've given over time. And so that's like, it's kind of my like safety net in the future is like, I believe that we should always be constantly thinking that.
It's your network. Yeah.
When you
absolutely.
especially when things are going right.
Yeah.
Things are going right. I get how people don't think they need to network. They don't think they need to build relationships. They don't think that because everything's going right. Like in my head, that's the time that I should be doing more because I have more resources, less stress to go give more value because there may be a time winter comes that I'm going to need it.
Yeah.
Where I think people get stuck in those cycles where things are great and they forget and they don't take care of those things, take care of people the same way. So I think it's always putting people first. And I think in the game of golf, if you are networking in a golf game, it's using that time to build that relationship and find, if I'm going to golf, let's say with 3 people, let's say they're important people, I'm figuring out during that game, what's their favorite sports teams? What's their favorite? What do they love? What do their kids love? What are all of these things? And you better believe, at the end of that round, I'm going to call my wife up and say, hey, we need to get this gift, this gift, this gift.
Exactly.
Let's send them to their house.
Yes, absolutely.
That is how you take an experience and you start to build a relationship. Well, then will lead into whether it's a sale, whether it's it doesn't matter what it is. But I don't think I've ever looked at this person. Oh, if I get to this person, they'll get me to that person.
Yeah.
I've always known if I get to that person, they have a group of people that may lead me to the next one.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just always how my brain's worked is connection. But I think the caution in this is it's to not get the sale, it's to build the relationship. And if you can build good relationships, you'll never want for sales. Like you'll have the sales, they'll come. So
that's an incredible philosophy. One of the first things that we do when we go in and work with a client is we sit down and we say, okay, go through this scenario. Your car's broken down, 2 a.m., side of I-15. Write down 10 names of people you can call that are going to come pick you up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, okay, now write down the 10 names of your top 10 clients.
Yep. And
then I say, okay, let's compare those 2 lists. How many people are on both lists? And it's usually maybe 1, usually none. And I go, why is that? Why aren't they both the same list? And because when you have close relationships like you just talked about with the people you do business with, everything seems to be going well, right? Yep. And then when things don't go well, that conversation is so much easier to have because it's coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of trust. It's coming from a place of mutual respect. So you hit the nail on the head on why golf is so great for networking. I honestly, I'm an introverted person. I hate going to networking events. Like it is the worst experience for me. I hate it. And I force myself to go because I know this is where I need to be. I need to meet people. I need to talk to people. So it led me to talking with you, randomly reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, I saw you're putting on a golf tournament. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to come play in it. And they mentioned, hey, you should probably talk to Shea, which led to working with Wedge, which led to us sitting in this room, which is just incredible how things happen. Richie Norton was sitting in this room a while back.
Love Richie.
Which Richie's, I read his book, The Power of Starting Something Stupid, probably 10 years ago, and I love that. But he said something on the Slopes show that has stuck with me, and he said, Clint asked him, he says, what's the one thing in all of your time that is stuck out to you? And he says, help will always come from the most unexpected places and in the most unexpected ways.
Yep.
And I found that to be true. And especially when you kind of put yourself in that, hey, I'm coming from a selfless place, that people are more willing to step up and help you out. And that's what our training does, is it takes people like me who hated networking, and it helps you change your mindset to, I'm here to make connections, like you just said, and I'm here to build connections and help other people, not necessarily myself. So appreciate you sharing that. That was fantastic.
I think that's what, if people can remember, it's the outward, right? You push it outward and the good things will come. I say it all the time. Everything good in my life has become because I didn't care about the result, but I understood doing that action over and over was going to yield results. I didn't care about the timing.
Yeah.
Like, I understood it will come, and sometimes it comes, equal with the time you put in, you get it right back. And sometimes you put in a lot of work, and then, a year later, it all seems to finally become fruitful all at once. Right. And so I think I just trust. I trust that if you do good, then it will come back. But I do think there is that you have to take the time, and I won't say his name, but there's a powerful individual that I've been able to get connected with. One of the things I learned from him, being even where he's at, is when we were about to go into an event, and it kind of threw me off the first time he did it, because I always do this naturally, but I've never done it with like the group of people I'm going with.
Sure.
I've always been in my head like, okay, what am I going to do? And I remember we stopped in the car and they're like, okay, what do we need to get out of this? What are we trying to accomplish? Like, and we went around the car and like all talked about, hey, I want to connect you with this person. I want to connect you with this person. We actually like came to a game plan together, and we all just went and did our things and connected those people. But I think that is something of the preparation of going in, and people think, oh, I'm just going to go to this event, it's going to work. No, it's not. Like, you got to put in the time and be thoughtful and approach it in the relationships, approaching what can I give to all of these people. And some of the best gift is a relationship.
Absolutely.
And I feel like I've been a connector. Half of my 400 unread text messages is people like, oh, I just need to connect this person with this person.
Yeah.
And that's the value I can bring for them, and hopefully they go on to do something
I've been
great.
on the receiving end of that as well.
Absolutely. So and then knowing now that I'd given them value for both of them, and hopefully it goes on to be an incredible relationship. But I now, instead of trying to solve their problems, let's go find somebody else to solve their problems.
There's probably someone better suited to do this, right?
But I think to kind of go in the game of golf, what is helpful, and I will say to kind of plug what you're doing, is to get good at the game of golf.
Yeah.
And I always say this, like, you got to learn how. Obviously, chipping and putting is the way you bring down scores, but you got to learn how to get off the tee box.
Yep.
If you can't get off a tee box, it's going to be an embarrassing round. So now the reality is the tee box later on, you don't realize it's not as important. It is the chipping and putting, and it's that $100 or 100 yards in. But you got to get off the tee box. Like, that is a big part of it. But once you become the guy that golfs, what's been cool the last 2 years is I'm now the person people think about. I think people think I golf all the time, which I don't. But I am the one, and a couple of people high up, like when they have a golf event, they call me.
Right.
Like, hey, I'm taking Shea with us.
Yeah.
So I went and played in California about 6 months ago. I get invited, call me up, hey, you're the golfer, I need a ringer to come in and play, and I'm not that big of a ringer. But it's me, him, a billionaire, and the person that Trump nominated as the national security advisor. He said no to it.
Okay.
But he was the CEO of Lockheed Martin Middle East at one point.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
These are some high-power people.
I didn't know. It was a military event. And so I go in there, and I'm like, and I knew the billionaire, but I didn't know who Bob was at the time. And I'm like, Bob, like, oh, did you serve in the military? And the other two were like,
I don't know who this is.
Like, he ran the Navy SEALs. Like, he was the guy.
He was the military.
So that I wasn't prepped as much at that. That was Bob Harward, actually. But an incredible round. And we got to spend, and the cool thing with the game, obviously they have careers that trump mine, all three of them, like not even close.
Yeah, right.
But I could beat them all in golf. And so because of that, there was this respect that I got with these three individuals that are so far ahead where I'm at, from a political career to a military career and business career to just a business real estate titan. But I got to feel comfortable in that because I could beat them all at a game of golf.
Yeah.
And I could have leverage at least a little bit in that group because I was carrying the team.
Right.
And we ended up coming freaking second or third.
Someone was sitting in the clubhouse.
And it was awful.
And
But
writing down scores.
but I remember the billionaire turned to me
Yeah.
and he's like, it turned to my buddy and he's like, is he good? Like, we got to win this.
We got to win this.
And I carried my end of the bargain. The other three didn't. So, but that's actually, I got connected with Patrick Manning down at Black Desert.
Yeah.
We're at Silicon Slope behind, kind of underneath, backstage. And my buddy was talking to Patrick and I'm sitting there and I'm wore out. It was a long day. And I just hear him say, hey, come over here. And I'm being introduced to Patrick Manning as, hey, Shea's the guy that's golf. He's the one that helps with all these charity events.
Yeah.
And so, like, it was a posture opportunity with Patrick, and we ended up having dinner together that night, and I got to hear all about Black Desert, and this was about September of last year.
Yeah.
And so that built that relationship with Patrick. But the work of me spending all that money in charity in these tournaments and doing those things put me in those moments where now I'm thought about when we think about golf. So I get those opportunities that open up doors that are much more valuable than what I've ever paid to play in a tournament.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing is you didn't plan on doing that and meeting
no,
and ending up on the board at back to no idea, right? And so none of this was done preconceived. And that's what happens when a lot of people go to networking events. They show up, they've got these preconceived notions, this is what I need to get out of this, and they don't open themselves up to all the craziness that could also happen. I want to touch on one thing that you talked about, which is preparation and preparing for a round of golf. And you had this moment with Bob Howard and these things. And preparation is one of the things that we work with clients on. And I prepared for this interview the same way I would have prepared for a round of golf if we had gone out and played, right? I looked you up online. I see what you're talking about. I know you're passionate about NIL. I know that's something that I can connect with you on, right? And so I want to talk to you about that and what are some ways that you've found that you can better prepare for some of these rounds? And maybe it's a situation where you don't know who the players are. What are some things that you can do? Because that preparation is what's going to give you the confidence to be in the room in the first place, right? You know you belong there. You know you're prepared. You know you're ready.
So I think number one comes from self-awareness. But I think what I've realized is we have different identity. We have this one, obviously, core identity. But when we're with our friends playing golf, we have that version of ourselves. And when we're in a business deal, we have that version of ourselves. Or when we are at University of Utah, you're a Utes fan. When you're a fan, that's like a sub-identity of who you are in that moment. And you're a little bit different as that fan than you are in a different way. And so
officials,
So what I would say is you should be confident in all of those people that you are, all of those frames that you are, but knowing which frame to present in that golf game is important.
Yeah.
Meaning this, like being in the financial services, weirdly enough, that is not a good frame to network at all.
Sure.
People's walls go up.
Yep.
I've never once, after the first couple times I did this, will introduce myself as like, oh, I help people with retirement. Like, I just try not to do that because I understand with all the multi-level marketing companies and everything, people are going to, I don't want to give you my money. Or I'm running a fund. Nope, don't want to give you my money. And so I realized that, what else am I passionate about? Well, I'm a sports fan. I'm a golfer. I love philanthropy. We have a foundation. We do these things with Folds of Honor. We do all these things. Yep. And so knowing kind of which person to bring up that's going to connect with those three people the most, because they don't need to know maybe the business stuff. Maybe we're both Florida State fans. I'm a Florida State fan. Yeah. Florida State fans, and like, boom, I'm just going to, that's the easiest way to build a relationship. Because we can, I already know all the events we can go to the rest of our lives together because we connect on something. And so I think that's the preparation of also first ourselves, like an inventory of like, who are we? Yep. And we don't, even in a business sense where you're trying to get something out of this, that may not be how the person to bring in that tournament. It may be the fun, just talk about sports and hang out. And 18 holes is a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Like you get to know a lot about somebody, but I think it is important who you present yourself at first, like how you present yourself in the beginning. Yeah. And make it about them, not about you. So many times I'm around people and they talk about all the stuff they done. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, and so I think a lot of the preparation is people want to talk about them.
Yeah.
And if you, even people that are uncomfortable, introverts, like if you can get them talking about themselves, that's how you're going to get
Yeah,
information.
absolutely.
And then you know where to take that conversation. Now, if you know who you're playing with, we have something called Google and
Right,
Instagram
exactly,
and
right?
Facebook. I can know everything about
Yeah.
somebody if it's public.
Yep.
I can know what kid they're playing. They got kids playing golf. They're sports fans. Like
Yep.
I know everything about them. And so now I'm prepped with either gifts. One of the things when I invite people to play in my like charity tournaments with me, and I've done it a lot, is I will put gifts together for
Yeah.
the three
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I invite.
Yeah.
And they're like, what's this?
How did you know this?
Like
Yeah.
the tournament already is giving gifts, but I have like a package of things that are valuable, of Pro V1s, of some of these
Yeah.
things. And it's just, I've always done that. I
Yeah.
think that's such a power. I think gift giving is such a power move,
Absolutely.
opportunity, but not but actual planning on the gift and spending time to make it meaningful to
Right.
them.
Yep.
That is something that the preparation is about, and meaning take yourself out of it and just think about them,
Yeah,
or
I
think
love that.
about what you would like
Yeah.
if
I love
somebody
that.
gave you. So I think that's where the preparation, I would say, is using the resources that we have.
Yeah.
Be resourceful.
I think people shy away from bringing things up like, hey, I stalked you on the internet.
Yeah.
But people aren't putting things there because they don't want people to see it.
100%.
And I think once you understand that and they're like, oh, yeah, I remember I put that up
Mm-hmm.
on there. Like, yeah, thanks for bringing it up. I love talking about it.
Well, an easy way to say, like, even if you'd even say, like, oh, I know you're a BYU fan. Let's say they're a BYU fan, and you know they're a BYU fan. But like, oh,
Yeah.
are you? And I would say, you Utah fan or BYU fan? Knowing they're a BYU fan. But like, let them answer the question.
Yeah,
Right? Like, let them
Let's stir the pot a little
let's
bit.
stir the pot
Yeah.
a bit, and you get to kind of see how they react. But I think finding those common parts of the relationship doesn't mean you have to be alike with people to do business with people.
Yeah.
But it's spending time to care what they care about. And obviously, you guys, typically if they're on the golf course, they must like golf
I
too.
almost like golf.
So you can spend a lot of time talking about the game
Talk
of golf.
PGA, talk
Absolutely.
live versus
Live,
PGA is
all
the
of
greatest conversation topic of all time now. It's fantastic.
All of it. And so I think there's a lot of preparation that somebody can take, but I think it's once again going back to, if the relationship's the top of mind, that's you'll end up you'll be fruitful
Yeah.
in it. But you got to get good at golf too. Like, people want to play, if you want to start to get an elite, you want to start to get invited, you got to
Yeah.
get better. And
Yep.
better for some people is 95, and it gets to 90 and you get to 87. I saw Drama, who was Rob Dyrdek's cousin, if you remember Robin Big.
Yeah.
He, he's done multiple things, but he's got a podcast now, and he's like picked up golf, and he's
Nice.
like, I know you guys are going to make fun of me, but I shot a real 87 yesterday, and I'm so proud, right? And he was so proud.
That's awesome.
And you realize, like, I just got to know the game of golf, and, I could shoot in the 70s pretty quickly. But you realize the average is like, that's most people.
Yeah.
And so 87 is incredible for somebody who's picking up
Yeah.
golf and they're learning a true 87 without a bunch of gimmies and mulligans.
Right.
And you just start to bring it down, and then you'll get invited
Yep.
to a lot more things. I got a call the other day, and they're like, hey, we're going to Georgia. Got me and 8 buddies. Do you want
Nice.
to come with me? I need
Nice.
somebody to come play with me. And
That's awesome.
and like, that's because you build those relationships.
Well, piece of it is getting good at the game, and being good at the game isn't being a scratch golfer.
No.
It's not being a PGA Tour level player. Like, that is unbelievable. That's
Mm-hmm.
the exception. Being good at the game is being competent, being able to hit shots you can find, not taking tons of time when you're out there playing, knowing the rules, and then the other piece of it is being fun to be around.
Yes.
Be the vibes guy. Be the guy
Yes.
that's out there having fun, pumping each other up, not getting frustrated with yourself, right? And I used to have a tendency to do this. I was the guy who would break clubs on the
Me too.
course and throw clubs and
Mhm.
and get pissed and throw stuff and get mad about it and sit in the golf cart and sulk and stuff. And when I had that realization of, like, maybe when things aren't going all well, I can be excited about somebody else's game.
Absolutely.
And then that gets me out of myself, and then all of a sudden I start playing better. But that's the thing that I tell people. And when I coach players and when I work on their swings with them, I'm like, I'm not going to turn you into a scratch golfer, but I'm going to get you confident enough in your game so that when you get called to go play around in Georgia or go on a buddy's trip, you're not thinking, I'm going to go embarrass myself. It's like, I'm going to go out and have a good time. People are going to enjoy being with me. And then from there, what you said is those relationships happen. And then that's where we start finding success, which is fantastic.
No, I think it's interesting because when you approached me with what you're doing, I just met with a group called Four Athletes.
Okay.
I can't think. He's a quarterback. I can't think of his name. He's in it and a PGA guy, but they've put together a group. It's specifically for pro athletes.
Sure.
But to the same thesis of what you're doing is he's like, so many of those athletes were asked to do the charity tournaments and do those, and they were embarrassed, or they got made fun of, or they just didn't want to. And so they've created this kind of subgroup. I think it's called For Athletes. And really it's just like they put these athletes together and they go do trips together. Nice. And really they're teaching the game of golf. They're making it so that they feel comfortable. You got people like Eastside Golf then wearing their hat. Like they've brought in this whole new group of Black culture into the game of golf. And some of them, especially that were so successful at basketball or football or whatever they're doing, they're not as good at golf. And so they have this competitive nature, but they have to still learn the same, techniques, and it's just a different process. But you see people like Jordan and Curry and Tony Romo. There's people that competitive nature is what all they, they'd probably be good in any sport. But they found a love in the game of golf because you can be competitive. My grandpa did play till he was 84. So you can play, basketball, you can play football, you can play, but I think that's where you're seeing a lot of athletes get attracted to it because they can, and business. I think both golf and business because there's a competitive nature within it. But now you're getting different people from different backgrounds. It's not just the white country club people anymore like it has been, and it's still a lot like that on the PG. Like there's still that, but it's going to get ripped down quickly.
It's changing quick,
and it's amazing. And you're going to have these different groups. But what I always tell my wife is, like, as much as we have internet and we have e-gaming and all these different types of things, the cool thing about golf is it's outside, literally in a garden. Like in a beautiful garden. And you're outside in the sun, having fun, hitting a ball with a stick. Like that is, what else would we want, to be doing and being outside, especially teaching our kids. Like, you get to be outside. You get to go enjoy nature. You get to go and do those things. And like you said, for me, golf was a therapy because it taught me that you can't play frustrated. It is a mental game.
100%.
And I think that's what I've fell in love with it. But it's been cool to see after COVID this evolution of golf.
Yeah, it's so fun to see everybody getting into it. And you kind of brush the surface of it a little bit, but I kind of refer to it as the Tony Finau effect here in Utah, where all these kids are realizing, I don't need to grow up at the Salt Lake Country Club to be a great player. I don't have to grow up being invited to the private club. Like, I wasn't a private club kid growing up. Like, I was public course Joe, and I still am. Like, I love going out and playing the munis. Like, Nibley Park I love Nibley Park. Like, I played the junior league. I played in the junior league there when I was a kid. Like, it was fantastic. That's where I learned the game. That's where I learned how to make friends. Like, that's what I loved about golf, and I love that we're seeing that again, and we're seeing it in older people now that are now getting into the game. They're realizing, hey, I can use this in my career. I can use this to make friends. Like, I love seeing that in the game, and that's what I'm here for, to help people do that and feel more comfortable with it, to get into the game, to get going with it. So,
what would you be for you? Like, I guess, what's your pitch to everybody other than that? Like, what's ideal for you to get? Like, what's the ideal client for you?
It's people who are trying to get into the game, and for me, it skews younger. In business school, so I went to business school, and in business school, they don't teach relationship building. And I look back it's awful. And I look back, and not to bash on business school, there's a lot of really good things that go on there, right?
I'm a college dropout. So.
There you go. Well, I'm a 2-time grad, so not to brag, I got some frames on the wall, but
no, I respect that.
It's not taught. And I look back on this, and I had the idea to start this 10 years ago when I was in business school. I was playing golf with a couple classmates. And I was like, why is there not a class in my MBA that is a 1 credit hour class that teaches me how to play golf and then talks about the relationship building side of things on the other side? Didn't exist. And so for younger kids coming out of college, they get into these sales roles, and it is so transactional. And they end up living their entire life transactionally instead of being in this transformational mindset that you were a perfect example of living in. And that is where you find success. You might find success in sales if you're transactional. You might find, that you can get a sale done, you can get these things done, but you're going home to maybe wife, whatever, but you don't have any friends. You got nothing else. You don't have buddies calling you up asking you to go play golf in Georgia. And so that's where I'm working is a lot with younger people and people getting into the game, but they've realized maybe they put into a role in their company that, okay, I'm being asked to play golf a lot. I should probably get better and learn a little bit more on the other side. And there's no like Jedi mind tricks to it, right?
Sure.
It's all about learning confidence in yourself. It's all about learning etiquette. It's all about learning situational awareness. You brought up, self-awareness, and that's one of the big things that we hit on is you need to be self-aware when you're on the golf course. Go help somebody find their ball, like know how much time you're taking, know when to pick up and know when to move on, those types of things. And So that's really the space that we play in. And I appreciate you asking the question, but it is so much fun for me. Like, started as a passion project, and then I realized, okay, this could be a business, which is so exciting. So we got a couple minutes. I want to wrap up. Any last thoughts or anything that you want to share that you're working on? Kind of what's next for Shea?
Yeah, I think, the more the passion project, we got a partner, we own a financial services, he runs a RIA side. I got a partner who runs an RIA side. We got a lot of business stuff going on, but I think, the passion projects is, we have a company, Stonebriar X, which is really, it's like my playground. It's like, what do you do? I'm like, I don't know, whatever comes up. And so recently it's been golf. It's been helping people like Kihei Kina and Allie Mulhall, and she's, can freaking hit the ball over 300 yards and world long drive
crazy,
champions.
Right?
And I guess she won the Masters drive, putt, and chip, I believe, a few years ago. And what I would say for the community is we have this opportunity to support these young golfers, not just the juniors. I mean, your kids coming up, like your son coming up, and creating an environment and a community that is an intersection. What I always say about golf's an intersection of wealth, charity, and brands.
Sure.
Right? So you have the wealthiest people in the world because of the country club.
Mm-hmm.
What do they do when they want to go hang out and be away from the world? I actually think country clubs are overrated. That's why people are like, I love Alpine or Riverside. I'm like, I'd go play Wasatch Mountain any day of the week. But I get the value of those country clubs is the community, is that network that you can go and just go link up with somebody and go play. So I understand that value. But then you have Folds of Honor. Then you have charities that are central to there. And now you have companies. The reason why Charles Schwab is a sponsor. The reason the biggest brands in the world are on the stages of the PGA on those, because it's this intersection of wealth, brands, philanthropy, and I think as Utah has built in this business world, and I think we've done incredible on it, but I think now as the game of golf, I think it's important for us to support the game of golf, and the easiest way to support is to support these youth coming up and help them and have more Tony Finau's. Have more people that are coming up through here and make our universities, make Black Desert a place where the best juniors in the world want to go.
Yeah.
And that is a benefit, not just for the youth, but it'll help the businesses. It's going to help bringing people here, just like Silicon Slopes has been. It was kind of a beginning of being a network group that kind of got in the people, the Obamas, to come speak. And these people that we never thought would come here to Utah and speak, Tim Cook from Apple came and spoke. You got all these people, but now we have it through athletics, and I think that's what Ryan Smith's doing right now.
Yeah.
I think Ryan Smith, as he sold Qualtrics, is like, okay, we've always had the Jazz, we've done really well with our college sports, and now we can go get a hockey team and a baseball team and a soccer team and a rugby team, and now we're with golf, a PGA tournament coming for the first time in 50 years. We got Tiger Woods building a Marcella course up north, and we've got more courses coming. There's more coming.
Love it.
And it's becoming this intersection of, I think, of great opportunity for everyone involved. And I think everyone should learn the game of golf. I think they need to hit people up like you and learn, but first learn and respect the game of golf. Why I love watching Kihei is because I watch him play, and I'm honestly mesmerized by how he plays. The same way when I went and watched Kobe play or went and watched some of these people, it's not that they're hitting a ball, but it's the way they play. The way that kid works a green is there's nothing like it. And so there's this respect to the game that I think will people will see why it's valuable.
Yeah.
And so it's just been fun, man. I there's nothing really that I need other than I think people to be aware of the good things that are happening here. There's so much bad that happens, and everyone wants to talk about all this stuff, but man, we are in a better place today than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 100 years ago. I'm sure World War II people thought the world was ending too. Everyone's like, the world's ending. I'm like, well, let's look back in time. I bet there was moments that were like this, that they thought the world would be done. And I believe in the human that we will overcome, and if you're optimistic. So I think there's good things. I'm excited for what you're doing. I actually think it's very needed what you're doing.
Well,
I think it's something very specific, and I think organized in a way that people can support you.
So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate your time. And just a quick thanks. We're sitting in this room because of you and the connections that you've made, and so really appreciate that. And Dave back here helping us produce
Dave's the man.
the show has been awesome. So Shea, really thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. So we'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
Perfect.